Welcome back to another edition of Rob Sports Center. As you can see by the title of the video, the day Larry Bird showed Michael Jordan who's the boss. Now, I love whenever I can find Bird versus Jordan, Jordan versus Magic, Magic versus Bird, all the greats of that era. I love when I can find whenever they have head-to-head matchups because it's always like a game of chess to figure out, you know, how can I make the right move to come out victorious in this game? So I always love these matchups. But you know how we do over here, man. I ain't gonna talk you out of depth too much. But before we get into this video, do me a big favor, man. Smash that thumbs up button. Also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. When you subscribe, click that post notification bell. That way you be notified on all things Rob Sports Center because I'm posting every day. And by the way, if this is a Bird video, right? Larry Bird video. If you are a Larry Bird fan, drop in the comment right now, Team Bird. So if I got 100 views on this video and 100 likes or 50 likes, whatever, right? I need to know how big of a Bird fan you are. Just drop Team Bird down in the comment section. Now let's get into this video. My bad.
Being on the throne is not just about being the king, it's about being the rival to beat. And you also got to be willing to prove your superiority to any opponent who aspires to kingship. And that was exactly the situation.
I'm trying to make sure I ain't blocking y'all off, but I'm trying to make sure I'm in the frame too.
I much rather guard Michael Jordan than Larry Bird because you have to play the game as a thinker when you're playing.
The Celtics forward was not only coming off one of the most successful individual seasons in league history, winning his third consecutive regular season MVP and hoisting the Larry O'Brien while earning his second finals MVP.
I'm really proud to receive this award for the third time.
Bird was changing the game. The whole conception of the small forward was different after his time in the NBA. But just when he looked like he was the undisputed king, a new lion was coming to the pride.
And look, so me and
difference right from the start. And from the very first,
me and a guy had a conversation in the parking lot yesterday at my job, and we was just talking about, you know, the greats, and I was just saying like how I was telling him that with my channel, my take on anything, I'm not gonna be biased. So if let's just say hypothetically speaking, if I'm a Michael Jordan fan, right, and it was a game where Larry Bird was giving Michael Jordan that work, right? I'm not gonna make up excuses of to why, oh, well, it was because Jordan was this, or it was because Jordan was that, right? Because like I said, eventually, as time goes on, right, you have generations, you have different eras of talent that's coming in, right? So at some point, the predators of their era is gonna become the prey because physically their body can't do what they used to could do. So it's not that this player is necessarily that much better than them. It's just this player's time. You know what I mean? And that was something that my dad used to always talk about was it's a young man's game. When we used to have debates about Kobe and LeBron, it's just, bro, it's their time, you know?
he made it clear to Larry that he wasn't afraid of him at all. The Celtics were still the better team, but MJ put on one of the greatest performances in playoff history against Boston in 1986, making a statement about who was the better player on the hardwood. And from then on, the rivalry burned hotter than ever. See, Larry Bird had a mission. For his entire career, he had been the undisputed best player in the NBA. But now, 23-year-old kid who was averaging 37 points per game was challenging him for the reign of the king of world basketball. Bird had already proved it all. His legacy was
You see,
but his
peep how Bird offered to help Jordan up after he was on the ground.
The reason was simple. Bird was
I like
ready
that.
to become the GOAT of basketball. The forward had been breaking every barrier in existence since arriving to the NBA. In 1979, Bird signed a contract with the Celtics to become the highest paid rookie in league history at $650,000 per year. But as soon as he arrived in the NBA,
Man, that's crazy, bro. Like just hearing
he finished fourth in the
hearing
MVP
the
race.
salary back then to what the salary is now. I know a lot of the players from back then probably was just like, well, look at a lot of these the current day players and look at their contracts and just be like, man, that's crazy how much money these guys are making. And they're not even having to be as productive as we was having to be. You know what I mean? Like you got guys coming into the league now making a ton of cash.
Rookie year.
And they haven't even played a game in the
Not
NBA
only
yet.
did he win the NBA ring for the first time in 1981, but he also finished second in the MVP race 3 times. And his averages during this stint, 22.6 points, 10.9 rebounds, and 5.7 assists per game. But something happened during the summer of 1983. Bird went from being the second best player in the league to a completely legendary player, and absolutely superior to his eternal rival Magic Johnson. Thus began his incredible 3-year stint in which he became one of the greatest players of all time. From 1983 to 1986, Bird achieved 3 NBA MVPs. After winning the 1984 championship and being, for the first time in his career, MVP of the finals, Bird ascended
once
to
again,
NBA
bro,
Olympus and
how can you, like, it's almost blasphemy to not say that Bird is one of the greatest or to call him overrated. An overrated player doesn't win 3 NBA championships. An overrated player doesn't get 3 consecutive MVPs. An overrated player doesn't get the respect from his comrades that Bird gets. In terms of, like, you hear Mike speak highly of him, Magic speak highly of him, Barkley, all these guys. But you still have people that says that he's overrated. Like, that's crazy to me.
put his name in the history books forever. During those 3 seasons, Larry averaged 26.2 points, 10.1 rebounds, and 6.7 assists per game, while continuing to be an elite defender, by the way. This was his status just prior to the start of the 1986 playoffs. A versatile forward who was capable of doing everything on the court. There had never been a big man who had the skills of a perimeter player in traditional basketball until he came along. And not just because of his iconic 3-shot, becoming one of the first small forwards that played the power forward position to be able to stretch the floor. His incredible passing ability allowed him to become a true leader for those Celtics, both on offense and defense. But in order to win his 3rd ring in 1986, he first had to get past the team with a major stud that was starting to make some noise. And just less than a full year later, it was March 27th, 1987. The Celtics, with a record of 51 wins and 19 losses, were coming off a back-to-back to face a Bulls team with a record of 35 wins and 35 losses. That, by the way, was also coming off a game the night before. Bird was having a pretty good season with averages of 28 points, 9 rebounds, and almost 8 assists per game.
Man, that's almost a
that allowed
triple-double,
him to
bro.
finish 3rd in the MVP race. While Jordan, who would end up finishing 2nd, was averaging an absurd 37 points per game. The Celtics came out with an unusual starting 5 due to the absence of Dennis Johnson, who was replaced by Jerry
Man,
Sitchin.
I'm trying not to.
Away from home.
I'm trying not to pause it too much, man, because it's like every video I watch, it's so many different things that I be wanting to chime into. But it's like, so I'm looking at a lot of stuff that happened back in the day, right? You got a lot of players, like I feel like a lot of stuff that's happening today, like how you got some players who almost average triple doubles or some players who average triple doubles. You had the same thing back then. Like how you have today, you got some people that have crazy average of points per game. You had the same thing back then. It's just back then the technology or the social media presence, it didn't exist like how it exists now. So when you got players that's doing these things now, it's gonna be magnified because it's on a global scale. You can see it on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube. So it's so many different outlets for you to see the stuff that the players nowadays are doing. Back then you didn't have that. You know what I mean? So if you didn't really watch sports, you didn't have no clue of what was going on in terms of history being made on a week-to-week basis. You know what I mean? On a day-to-day basis, But it's...
He knew it would be a tough.
I got a lot of debates coming from old school and new school, so...
Bird showed what kind of night he was going to have. His off-ball movement was elite, basically, because of his enormous basketball IQ, his fakes. I mean, this was one of the most dangerous men in basketball without the ball in his hands. That, coupled with the gravity he generated from his mid-range and long-range shooting, was lethal. Plus, he was a typical player who was blessed by the divine touch, okay? But once again, his arsenal from the low post was unpredictable. It's easy to find samples of his off-ball ability and gravity, as it was often his easiest way to score. But on this day, his mid-range shot was touched by a magic wand. He just couldn't miss, and he was able to abuse it again, and again. Meanwhile, Jordan began to realize the enormous attention he was getting from the Celtics defense, which every time he attempted a drive sent multiple bodies to stop it. But far from getting advantages only without the ball in his hands, Larry was also able to score in ISOs from the low post, a move that decades later, Mavs legend Dirk Nowitzki patented and made his own. So the Bulls realized they had no choice but to do what the Celtics did with Jordan, a virtually continuous 2-on-1 when he had the ball in his hands. So Bird basically said, "You know
Start
what?
it.
I'm going to hurt them in
Yeah.
transition." Thus came the end of the first quarter, in which somehow the Bulls managed to stay close on the scoreboard, trailing by only 1 point, 36-35. Bird had a spectacular first quarter in scoring, 20 points, nothing more, nothing
Man,
less.
Bird put up 20
So
points
he
in the first
began
quarter.
to take advantage of that extra attention to test his versatility. He was able to transform garbage into gold. Case in point, this loose ball, which he turns into a great assist. And if there's one thing you don't want, it's for the guy who's destroying you from mid-range to start showing signs of his playmaking ability. Bird was unleashed, and players like Kevin McHale appreciate it. Even when they didn't count, Larry's passes were simply spectacular. No, he really didn't even need to score to be the most impactful player in the game. In some cases, MJ had to defend the Celtics star too, and the size difference played a key role in these situations. But knowing that the half-court offense was very difficult with two defenders on top of him, Bird continued to make use of scoring in transition. And what was more shocking, a player of his size dropping threes like it's nothing. But incredible.
Another aspect of Bird's game I'm just not realizing, just hearing them saying the transition offense. Bird was well conditioned because I've seen several Bird videos at this point. I haven't seen them all, but I've seen several of them. And his conditioning was never an issue. But then even if you think about it, the passion that Bird played the game with, you have to be conditioned in order to play it with that type of intensity. Consistent transition offense, you have to be very well conditioned, and I think that's an aspect of Bird's game that some people might overlook too. Like I said, I'm looking deeper than what the average person looking for. I'm looking at, okay, what's making this guy so dominant, and I see that his conditioning, it was a big vital part to him being able to do what he done, how he done it.
Managed to go into halftime trailing by only 3 points, thanks in part to the 16 points MJ had scored during the first 2 quarters, of course. When the third quarter began, Larry kind of relaxed offensively. He decided to use his gravity to try to find better options for his teammates, as he knew he would need one more offensive threat to take the game easily. And stepping up on defense, the Celtics got stops on Jordan that allowed them to get easy baskets on the other end of the court. But Bird continued his playmaker role for most of the rest of the game, as he led his team on
Yeah,
defense.
he was on Jordan's head, boy.
He was certainly a player who had no problem getting his hands dirty either. But when Larry attempted a shot during the second half, it was to score. And he kept sending occasional reminders to the Bulls defense. Reminders that one player...
Look how he constantly working off the ball, man.
In front of the United Center...
It's like not sitting still, he just constantly moving.
Fans, the forward was having a legendary game. The Celtics allowed just 22 points in the third quarter, by the way, and managed to head into the final quarter with a 9-point lead. And after resting for a couple of minutes, Larry continued to do whatever his team needed to do to get the win. These Celtics were good. I mean, like, really good. Bird was that piece of the puzzle that served as a wild card, too.
Look at that pass, the hockey assist, making the right pass to the right person to make the right pass to lead to a bucket.
To generate advantages on his own. And during the last quarter, the tone did not change. Bird continued to abuse from long distance as he had been doing all game. He continued to play the simplest yet most dominant basketball anyone had ever seen. But one of the virtues of genius is to make what seems complicated really
look easy.
You know? And despite the Bulls' final scare, who managed to cut the deficit from 11 points to 4, the Celtics defense stepped up to close the game. Bird did it. Months after MJ scored 63, the forward only had to play 100% for one half to show him that if he wanted to, he could do it too. 33 points in the first half, 41 in the game. That went down in history as one of the greatest displays of ego any player in the league could perform. The difference is that Larry's ego also made his teammates better. Weeks later, the Celtics met the Bulls again in the first round of the playoffs. And the result was the same as last year. Boston managed to advance by a score of 3 wins to 0. Yeah, so 6-0 in playoff games against Jordan's Bulls. That's the record that is stuck in history. When they met, Larry's Celtics were always better. So good that not even a superhero performance could stop them. And so Larry Bird, along with the Pistons of Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer, became the thorn in MJ's side that he really could never get rid of. Bird did not win ring that season. Magic Johnson's Lakers did. The other side of the three-headed monster that dominated basketball worldwide. But even if he didn't win the championship, Larry did world basketball a favor. He taught Jordan that he still had a long way to reach his full potential. He taught him that scoring isn't always enough, and that he needed to become a leader capable of bringing out the best in his teammates. And without the lesson that the greatest player in Boston Celtics history, with Bill Russell's permission, taught MJ, it is likely that basketball history would have been completely different. And Jordan and Bird's rivalry continued to cause a stir in the league, but they never met again in the playoffs. Larry would go on to post a 17-11 record against Michael's Bulls during his career, until a serious heel injury followed by
I forgot about that. The heel injury
shortened his career. Injuries that not only brought about the end of the Boston Celtics dynasty, but also sent them into a sinkhole from which they could not climb out of until 20 years later. And we all know that history is written by the winners, and very few people have won more than Jordan. And Larry Bird has kind of gone down in history as underrated compared to Jordan. But he was a forward who changed the traditional definition of basketball and who starred in one of the most competitive eras ever. And let's not forget that from 1983 to 1986, there was not a single player on the planet able to face him. No one. All right, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you thought down in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.
So Bird was up on Jordan throughout his career, 17-11. So I wonder does that count playoffs? Let me know in the comments if that counts the playoffs or was those just regular season matchups. But that is it for this video, man. If you guys did enjoy this video, do me a big favor, man. Smash that thumbs up button. Also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. When you subscribe, make sure that you have my post notifications on, the way you be notified every time I post, because just like I say in each and every outro, just like the legendary, the GOATed Drizzy Drake say, man, I'm coming back to back with these uploads. I'll see y'all in the next video.